Welcome into Morning Drive on the weekend. I am Gary Williams. Very pleased to be rejoined by Matt Adams and Jaime Diaz. Guys, good morning to both of you. Let's get to the latest news in the golf world at the professional level. And most of it, the last couple of weeks, of course, has been about scheduling. Let's start with the LPGA. You know, Mike Wan has been very proactive, guys, over the last couple of weeks. The Evian, they're going to take the date that was set aside for the women's golf competition at the 2020 Tokyo Games that obviously has been postponed until next summer. Matt, let me start with you. Reaction and thoughts about this decision by women's golf, the LPGA, and all of the governing bodies.
My first reaction, Gary, is that this is incredibly intelligent because at this point, I think it's a land grab. It's a question of where these big events are going to fall as we get later and later into this calendar year. If they are still going to be held in 2020, there's less and less time, Jaime. So they have to find a place where they're going to put these tournaments in. So as a big event moves, this being the Olympics, they were able to jump right on top of it. And I wonder, Jaime, if that's a pattern we're going to see not only with Evian, but with other big events as well.
Yeah, having that vacuum in the schedule suddenly in a year that perhaps will be tremendously compressed, it's very fortuitous to use the Olympic week like that. And Evian, of course, is the latest major, so that adds a little stature to it. I think symbolically it's important to get a major going as soon as possible for the LPGA. They've had to postpone 6 events. They've still got some on the schedule in May and April that probably are certainly at risk of being postponed. So Mike Wan's being very proactive, as Gary mentioned, and, you know, trying even to think about doubling up with some sponsors for some of the events that were lost. So, Gary, I think, you know, it's good news in the sense that it gives the LPGA a little bit of respite from, you know, this very aggressive cancellation and postponement syndrome that everybody's going through right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think it could be 3 massive weeks for women's golf. From there, the schedule would take them to the Scottish Open and the following week to the AIG Women's British Open. That would be 3 great weeks, but we know what's going on in Europe right now, and specifically in the UK. Again, that's a long way off, but it could be 3 great weeks. Now let's come back to the men's game and the US Open. Last 48 hours, a lot of chatter. First, it was the New York Post saying that, according to sources, they were going to postpone the event. The USGA, golfchannel.com, got a response from Beth Major, their senior director of communications for their championship, saying no decision been made. Now today, on Saturday, the Westchester Journal News reported that they have 2 people close to the discussions saying the same thing. Now, Beth Major had another comment saying that all the organizations are currently working together to try to resolve the scheduling for 2020 when golf does resume. But again, no decision has been made. Jaime, let me come right back to you. You're the one who on the Friday after the cancellation of the players said you thought your heart and your mind in that moment, which was 15 days ago, that maybe the Masters might be the only major in men's golf. What makes sense as we sit here today on March 28th?
Well, you know, the Masters has the autonomy and the resources to do things more independently, perhaps. But it seems like the momentum is let's try to get as many majors in as we can. And especially with the Olympics being postponed, that opens up a week perhaps for the PGA Championship, and perhaps they can stay at Harding Park. And then, of course, Winged Foot now with September, available as kind of a down week in the PGA Tour schedule to some extent. It's a place where they could fit in and maybe get in that slot either before or after the Ryder Cup, or I should say before the Ryder Cup. And then we're talking about Augusta in October, and who knows? I mean, I think the ones that are the most at risk, as you were mentioning, are in Europe, the Open Championship and certainly the Open Championship. So perhaps we get as many as 3 this year now. I think there's the fact that the leaders are all talking together and working this thing out in some kind of cooperative way is good news. And I think it's doable as long as coronavirus doesn't, just get more intense.
Jaime, I think the risk is that because we're still talking about FedEx Cup playoffs as well, once the PGA Tour gets back underway and where to find the spot for all of those events. And then we have to schedule, as you noted, the PGA Championship looks like it's going to jump right in there where the Olympics was. Where do we go from there? Rumors already about what will happen with the Ryder Cup. Will that move to the same week in 2021? Once that opens up in the off week on the PGA Tour, what's going to fill in there? There's rumors that it could be the Open in that slot, then go U.S. Open, then finish with the Masters. So the first in that case may be the last. Again, Gary, what we're looking at here is the risk of running out of time because of how compressed all of this is coming. And you alluded to, Gary, here, and I'm interested in what your opinion is of the same, is that all of golf's organizations are attempting, and they're saying the right things about keeping these majors at the facilities that have been announced as the host for 2020. But as we get deeper into the year with light patterns and with weather patterns, questions still remain.
No, it does. Look, these organizations, when they make these schedules almost a decade out in advance with respect when you start to line them up, a lot of it has to do first with the golf course, infrastructure, market as well. And naturally, why wouldn't the PGA of America want to go to a great city like San Francisco? Why would the USGA not want to go back to a great historic venue like Winged Foot in Westchester County in the shadows of New York City? But considering what is going on there right now, it's hard for me in my mind to find how plausible it might be, even if it is 30, 45, 60 days beyond that. We're talking about the resumption of building out infrastructures, which at Winged Foot was discontinued this past Monday. When can that resume? They are the epicenter of this entire thing. Matt, I do want to get back to what you said about the PGA Championship and filling out that Olympic date. That date is going to be grabbed by somebody, and it's going to be some significant event. Maybe it is, in fact, like you said, a major championship. That is July 30th to August 2nd. Now consider another date that's open. They have a week that is open between the Tour Championship that is scheduled for the end of August. And if you go to the individual sites of the wraparound events that currently are not on the PGA Tour's website, their individual websites give you dates for their events. The Military Tribute at the Greenbrier has their date on their website. That is 2 weeks after the Tour Championship. So right now, September 3rd to the 6th is an open date, theoretically, on the PGA Tour schedule. And let me add one other thing. There was an article today in the Korea Times talking about the CJ Cup and their organization wanting to relocate their event from where it is currently or has been held closer to Seoul. And they're in discussions right now with the PGA Tour. They do not have a current date, which has been in the month of October. Consider that, the Zozo Championship, and also that HSBC World Golf Championship. We're talking about Korea, Japan, and China from the middle of October to the end of October, which has been what they had last year. What happens there and how that affects potentially the playing of the Masters tournament? Jaime, there are so many pieces that these organizations are trying to put together.
Well, as you know, just putting up the original schedule is like a Rubik's Cube and fitting it all together. So altering it is even more complicated. But, actually South Korea and China and Japan are a little further ahead in terms of seeming to recover from the coronavirus. So I'm not saying they're more logical places for the tour to play, but in terms of the health issue, they might be safer places. I think something interesting as well, if New York continues to be a very hot spot in terms of coronavirus, is that there possibly are alternate spots where they could go. Oakmont and Pinehurst have been mentioned as well.
Yeah.
So, but I do hear in that kind of alternative universe this sense of determination that let's see if we can do this. Of course, everything's still unknown, but I like the sense that there's conviction and commitment towards let's get some golf in at the end of the year when things start to improve.
Well, keep in mind, guys, too, to what Gary was just alluding to, is that we normally on the PGA Tour break right at the Thanksgiving holiday, and then we don't start up again until early January. So there's 6 weeks in there that while it is the holiday period, it may also be a period of some golf being played. It remains to be seen, especially if some of those early events on the PGA Tour schedule, the so-called fall events on the PGA Tour schedule, get pushed to later in the year because some of them, such as at Sea Island, the RSM Classic, for example, are a Southern event anyway, and it can go later into the year without a problem. So this jigsaw puzzle that Jaime was just referring to is one that may get pushed into a different category, lends itself to a whole nother conversation, 2021, that it's not after a respite, it is hitting the ground running into the new year.
And we also don't know the impact this is going to have on a bona fide contact sport like football, professionally and collegiately, and what it does to maybe the landscape of professional sports and college sports, and as it relates to golf. Now, you mentioned Sea Island, Matt. Before we finish, yesterday, just these harrowing images of the home of Davis and Robin Love. You were there. Literally at their residence. You were there all week. They have, for a decade, they've hosted the draw party for the Wednesday Pro-Am of the RSM Classic, burning to the ground. I know that you had a chance to reach out to Davis and get further comment beyond the statement that he released yesterday. What did he say?
Yeah, absolutely frightening images of the home burning tragically, especially with everything else going on in the world right now. Now, I should note to you, Gary, that when you say I reached out to him, it was via text, and it was for a specific reason, which I'll get to in 1 second. Davis did say to everyone, he said, "We are safe thanks to your prayers. We'll touch base once we get settled." But in the personal note, he also said, "I have smoke inhalation and can't talk to everyone. Thank you for reaching out." And I thought that revelation was something for all of us, as you said, to take pause and think about the fact that he's dealing with something pretty serious here in the wake of that devastating fire.
Yeah, fortunately, everybody, as they made very clear right away, is safe. Well, again, we're going to have golf news every day, but you be sure to join Morning Drive every day for reaction to all the latest news, particularly when it comes to the scheduling decisions being made. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. You can also subscribe to the Golf Channel YouTube page for extra analysis every morning, as well as those Golf Central updates that you're going to get every night, including back on Golf Channel in a linear form on television. So for Matt and Jaime, I'm Gary. Have a great Saturday, everybody.